Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Burkeen.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report with Lee Burkeen. I want to go ahead and introduce our first guest, a former LSU Tiger, a former fullback, a highly recruited fullback from the state of Texas, the great state of Texas. In 1982, Jerry Stovall and George Ballou found a big-time diamond in the rough, Craig Rathjen, who signed with LSU and was a great player, number 13. He was 6'4", 200 pounds coming into LSU, the same class that produced Dalton Hilliard, Gary James from West Jefferson High School, Mitch Andrews from Houma, Louisiana, Kurt Gore from Alabama, Jeff Wickersham from Merritt Island, Florida. And I want to go ahead and introduce Craig Rathjen. Craig, thanks for joining us all the way from Houston, Texas.
Hey, Lee, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
When you turn back the curtains in time, Craig, coming in to play for LSU, take us back to when you were being recruited by George Ballou, who's still looked at as one of the greatest recruiting assistants of all time under Jerry Stovall. But what was it like being recruited by George Ballou? Because you were being recruited by SMU and the University of Texas pretty heavily at that time.
That's true. At the time, SMU was my favorite school. It was right out of the Pony Express with Craig James and Eric Dickerson, and they were getting ready to leave, and that was my first choice. And then Ron Myers, the head coach, decided he was going to go to, I think it was the New England Patriots. And so I canceled my official visit there. And, it was just a funny coincidence, I think. George Ballou only saw me play one time, and that was in the first round of the playoffs, the high school playoffs that were in the Astrodome.
Okay.
And I think I had maybe, a 30 or 40-yard touchdown, and I don't remember doing anything else that day. So it was just, I don't know, it was kind of one of those experiences that just all comes together. And I always tell people that, if George Ballou hadn't have been there that day, if I hadn't have done decent, what would have happened? LSU never would have showed up on the radar. And at the end of the day, I bless, I thank my lucky stars that Coach Ballou was there. And you talk about his job at recruiting. He was a great recruiter, but he was one of the finest men I ever met. So I love George Ballou.
And I know Coach Stovall. Stovall's been on our TV show here, Craig, a few times, and I think Jerry Stovall is one of the smartest LSU coaches ever. He ran a bank when he left LSU, and he was an AD, and at Louisiana Tech he did a lot of stuff there. But, being from West Monroe, I still think he should have won the Heisman Trophy and not Terry Baker back in the day.
Yeah.
But I say this is just me talking and following recruiting. I think Jerry Stovall was the best Louisiana recruiter ever, as a head coach. And I even say that over Saban.
Well, yeah, I don't know as much about Saban's recruiting style. I just know everything he does is golden. But I do know a lot about Jerry. And I think I've never met anybody that has a bad word to say about Jeremy. I'm sorry, that's my fun, about Jerry. But he was highly intelligent. He had passion for the Tigers like nobody I'd ever seen. And he had a great group of coaches around him. If you think in the 82 season, which is when I came in, he had Mac Brown as offensive coordinator. And Mac was at the peak of his college existence at that time. Then he went off and left. And that's kind of where it started to fall apart. But as far as Coach Stovall, he tore Louisiana up on the recruiting, and he ran an organization that was second to none at the time.
I want to talk about your stats. You signed in 82, and there's one game I remember in 82. Well, there's two. There's three I want to forget. Tulane game, Mississippi State. I told Wickersham that. Let's forget about Tulane game, Mississippi State game, the field goal. If those two are wins, we might be talking about a championship. But there was the Orange Bowl in 82 against, I thought, the greatest team ever in Nebraska. That was an NFL team that y'all played that night.
It was.
With Dean Steinkuhler, Dave Remington, Irving Fryer, Tom Rathman, They had Mike Rozier. I mean, it was like it was everybody's All-American team, and the defense shut down Nebraska for a half. That hadn't happened in 5 years. And it just wasn't a great game that day with Risher and Hilliard and James and Malcolm Scott. It just the points didn't come, but it showed that LSU belonged with the big guys and that they could play with the best team in the United States. And I remember the other game is beating the Bear at Alabama, Bear Bryant.
That's right.
And
that's right, his last season.
And Craig, I remember, and you were a freshman on the team, but I remember my dad and me watching it the first year ESPN was on TV in '82. And we watched that game, I think, 10 or 15 times replayed. And I think we even went to the airport, back when people would go to the airport and, you'd have like 10,000 people there. Now, they did it this year with Burrow. But to see LSU beat the Bear Bryant, it was like it was the greatest victory ever in the minds of LSU fans. And, holding Alabama's offense to like 50 yards total.
At that time, that was a great game.
And I remember a game, and I'm going to go back to bring back memories for you, but it's crazy. As a kid, I'm at the game, but your first game as a Tiger, y'all were playing Oregon State in Tiger Stadium. And that's week one. And my dad was saying, we're going to get a chance to see these new running backs play. I said, Coach, what new running back? Dad, what new? I used to call him Coach. He said, Dalton Hilliard. He said, son, we saw him in All-Star game, and Gary James from West Jefferson High School, and Dalton from Patterson. And sure enough, in the first game of their career in Tiger Stadium in 1982 against Oregon State, Gary James and Dalton Hilliard both rushed for 100 yards.
Right.
And the rest is history. It's like they
were great.
They were great, weren't they, Craig?
They were the best. I didn't have any understanding going into the college class that who Dalton and Gary were. When I got on campus, I saw both of them, and when you looked at Gary, I mean, he was like chiseled out of granite. I mean, he was. I don't remember how tall he was. Probably 6'1", 6'2". I'd never seen anybody built like that at that age.
220, 225, which was huge back then.
Yeah, it was incredible. And he was running a 4.2 according to everybody. I never saw it officially, but, a 4.2 kid running at 220, that's pretty stout. And then Dalton, just by looking at him, you could tell he was athletic, and those thighs were crazy.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that he is the best running back I ever played with in college. There's no doubt about it. And the best one I saw playing against. So I'm a Dalton fan out of those two. Gary was great. But, the thing about Dalton that I think everybody probably already knows was his vision was incredible. And those thighs allowed him such great balance that when you're blocking for Dalton, he essentially did all the work. He would set the guy up, the linebacker or outside linebacker up, so that you almost didn't have to know what you were doing. You just ran full speed, and he would put you in the position to make your block. So I think that's what made Dalton so great was his vision and lateral movement.
You're listening to Craig Rathjen, former LSU fullback, class 82, finished in 85 from Houston Memorial High School in Texas, turned down Texas to go to LSU. And speaking of Dalton Hilliard, Craig, I always remember watching him that the first guy that would try and hit him would go backwards or couldn't because of those tree trunk legs you're talking about. I remember it's like comparing a person trying to come up and tackle a truck. You're just going to lose. You're going to lose that battle. And he always found a way to get 5 to 7 yards. It was always 5 to 7, 10 yards. It just kept those chains moving.
There was no such thing as an arm tackle on Dalton.
No. The next day, you'd probably be feeling it or having it on ice for a couple of weeks before you'd get it back to normal. Speaking of Houston, Texas, Craig, I wrote down some names and some guys that played LSU. I can't talk about all of them, but the great state of Texas has been very good to LSU. And obviously, Y.E. Tittle, the great Y.E. Tittle out of Marshall, Texas. Charlie Alexander out of Galveston Ball, and Eric Hill. My goodness, Eric Hill. Eric Hill went to Galveston Ball. What a great pickup. Willie Williams, who's a friend of mine, went to Wheatley. Willie. converted to tight end to an offensive line. Harvey Williams, Hempstead, Texas. You remember that story, huh, Craig, with his National Day signing out of Hempstead over A&M.
Yes,
The Aggies are still unhappy about that. Joseph Adai. People forget Joseph Adai is from Houston, Texas, Sharpstown High School.
Sharpstown, yeah.
Alan Faneca, who started at John Curtis, believe it or not, high school, finished at Lamar Consolidated in Houston, Texas. And Andrew Luck, my favorite non-LSU player to ever come out of Houston, Texas. Went to Stratford.
Andrew and my son went to middle school. My oldest son went to middle school together. And I remember my oldest son, who was a good athlete, came home in 7th grade and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm thinking about trying out for quarterback." And they said, "But they've got this new kid named Andrew Luck that's coming in." So needless to say, my son went back to running back, and Andrew was the quarterback for that team. So we've known Andrew for a long time. What a great kid Andrew was.
Yeah, and come to find out, LSU did not recruit him. I know he went to Stanford. He was under the radar. Isn't that crazy, Craig?
Yeah, I have no idea why that didn't occur, but I know Andrew well enough to know that, he's a genius. And all you needed to know about Andrew was him turning down number one pick money his junior year and staying for his senior year to finish. I believe it was in architecture.
And he walked away and retired and put $20 million on the table.
Yeah, how about that?
Isn't that crazy? And then, but I want to take a break, and I wanted to talk about all the good things you and your wife have done, especially the Texas Children's Hospital, LSU, University of Texas, University of Houston, and Rice. That y'all helped, and also talk about your kids, and talk about Nolan Ryan. We're both Nolan Ryan fans. I'm a Yankee fan, and I'm also an Earl Campbell fan. I found out that you're fans of all three.
I certainly am.
But we're going to take a quick break and come right back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report with Lieber Keene. We got Craig Rathjen, former fullback from the 1982 class at LSU out of Houston, Texas. We'll be right back.
Hello, Sports Scouting Report fans. Like what you hear? Well, you're going to love our content at LAFootballMagazine.com. This week, check out Recruit Spotlight on Landry Walker quarterback Justin Hudson, who has committed to the Tennessee State Tigers this past week. Also, make sure to check out our podcast and pre-order your North or South Magazine edition for this upcoming season. All that and more on LAFootballMagazine.com.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening. We're back with the Sports Scouting Report with Lieber Keene. We have Craig Rathjen, fullback for LSU. Number 13 was his jersey number back in the day. Played for Jerry Stovall and blocked for Dalton Hilliard and Gary James. Herman Fontenot was on the team, was in that 82 team. And then you had Eric Martin was a player on that team. And speaking of Texas players, Craig, he went to Van Vlick, Texas. Yeah, he's a Texas guy.
Certainly was.
And was a running back, right, when he came in and moved to receiver?
I think he came in as a running back, if you can even imagine. If you ever saw Eric play receiver, you'd wonder how anybody would ever consider him a running back. But, and I suppose, I can't remember, I guess he's already there before Dalton and Gary came there, but I'm sure that was the greatest move in Tiger history, is moving Eric out to wide receiver.
Craig, the one pass I never will forget was that 82 season against Florida State with all the oranges at Tiger Stadium.
Best game I ever saw.
Remember that long throw to Risher to Martin in stride?
Yeah.
It was like a 70-yard bomb. I think Risher got every yard out of his arm because the ball went about 55 yards in the air, and Eric caught it. It was a bead. I mean, it was a bullet throw, and he caught it in stride and scored a 75, 80-yard touchdown through the air. And then the oranges just exploded. I mean, what was that like for you as a teenager experiencing this? Hey, Craig, you there? Hello, Craig?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. What was it like experiencing that game with Florida State with all the oranges?
The oranges started early. I mean, I think Dalton scored early, and the oranges just started coming out. And, I saw a few coaches getting hit with some oranges, and they told us to put our helmets on. So I knew it was going to be an interesting game from the get-go. I still haven't figured out where all those fans got all the surrounding area oranges and how they got them into the stadium. That's still dumbfounding to me. But it was the greatest college football game I have ever seen. In fact, it's probably the greatest football game I've ever seen in my entire life. It was nothing like it.
That's the only time LSU beat Bobby Bowden. That was the only time he beat
That's
LSU.
amazing. Yeah.
I think he was 7-1 against LSU, going back to the '79 game, Ensminger Woodley, when '79 in Tiger Stadium. That's when he started at Florida State. But I want to talk about, Craig, your sponsorships and donations and helping the Texas Children's Hospital, and talk about that. And you've helped and supported LSU gymnastics. Your wife was a gymnast at LSU. I want to put that out there. And you've helped with LSU and also with the University of Houston and Rice.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. My second son, when he was 18 months, was in a bathtub. A housekeeper was watching him, and she left him in there, and he had the hot water was running, so he had third-degree burns over a lot of his body. And Texas Children's, went in there and cleaned up all those burns. By the way, that's the worst experience that could possibly happen is watching a young baby have to go through rehab on those kind of burns. And they did an amazing job. It's a great organization. And then the same son also was a diabetic at 14. So they have fixed him up quite a bit, and we do everything we can to support Texas children. LSU, obviously, there's a lot of love there. There were two projects that we felt strongly about. You mentioned the donation to the gymnastics program. I think they named the training room after my wife. But that was the time Dee Dee Bro was getting her new gymnastics facility, which is, in my opinion, the best in the country.
Yes, definitely.
I don't know if you've seen it, but it's spectacular. They used to be in this very, very small facility that really wasn't even competitive, and now they've taken it to brand new heights. So couldn't be happier. I don't know if you've been to any of the gymnastics meets over there, but they pack the PMAC. They're in the top Super 6 every year, and that program is just awesome.
Craig,
So
I need to go to one. I really do.
I'm telling you. So my daughter has been a gymnast since she was really little, but I had never been to a college meet until maybe 4 years ago, 5. I guess it's been a little longer than that. And when I went, I didn't expect to enjoy it at all. Don't tell anybody I said that. But
okay, yeah.
It is awesome. And so now we got seats where we sit pretty much right on the floor, and I go to every meet I can because I just love watching those girls. Gymnastics is the most incredible sport. These girls start when they're 7 years old, and my daughter going into high school was working 30 hours a week in this sport. And the beating those girls take is unbelievable. But I have nothing but admiration for that whole program.
I've got a lot of respect for Dee Dee Bro, Craig. 43 years this year. 43 years at LSU. Is that amazing?
I've known Dee Dee since I was there. She coached my wife, and she's a great lady. And that program is at the top of all gymnastics programs in the country, and I couldn't be more proud of what her and all the coaches and all the girls have accomplished. So yeah, we're big fans.
Craig, who's been there longer, Sam Nader or Dee Dee Bro? Would that be like a 40-yard race of closeness?
I don't know exactly, but I'm going to say it's Coach Nader.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is an amazing man. He knows more about LSU than probably anybody that I have ever met, at least.
I will say this. I was 7 years old going to LSU's practice in 1977, and he was there in 77.
Yeah. So he's a treasure trove of LSU athletic information. And the nicest man. You could never ask for a nicer man.
Oh, big time. Sam is always calm. Always.
He is. He is always calm.
He's the calm man. Of anything that needs anything done, he is just so good at doing it. And then talk about your sons. Jeremy played for Rice and the Dodgers, played baseball.
Yes.
Bo played for Rice. Your daughter, Kirby, was a gymnastics at Arkansas, University of Arkansas. Yeah. And your youngest, I want to put this out there for recruiting, Colton, who was heavily recruited and signed with Texas, is now at a junior college to be re-recruited. Hey, LSU. He's at a junior college. So second time around, they could recruit your son, Colton, right?
Well, that'd be fun. I hope he plays well enough for them to want him.
What position is Colton going into junior college? And I'm sure he'll be recruited by all the big guys again.
He's an outfielder. He a left-handed bat and plays. In high school he played center field. He probably project more into right field in college. He's got a strong arm, fast kid. All three of my sons played outfield. They all tried to pitch. None of them could throw strikes, so they all made their way out in the outfield.
One thing we have in common, I'm a huge fan of Nolan Ryan. As a kid, I watched him with the Angels, and then I watched him with the Astros. Then I watched him with the Rangers, and I was mad that he went to the Rangers. I wanted him to finish as an Astro. And I still say to this, tell me if I'm wrong, Craig. I know you're a fan of him too. I've never seen a 40-year-old pitcher with a rubber arm that could throw 97 miles an hour.
No, I don't think you'll ever see anything like it again. Pitch counts and, the way they hold these players back. Nolan was just the opposite. If you've ever heard him discuss pitch counts, he gets angry. So what a competitor. The picture with him with the bleeding lip and getting ready to throw his 100-mile-an-hour fastball at somebody, he's just tough as nails. And how can you just not respect an accomplishment like that in sports?
And I hate saying this because I never like to see anybody rush the mound to fight. But he was the pitcher. You do not rush the mound to fight. This was a guy. This is a guy who was 6'4", chiseled, 240, athletic, mean.
Mean, yeah.
He didn't lose any of those mound fights. Even if they would go back and replay them. It was like, why would you charge Nolan Ryan? Why would you even try that?
That would have to be one of those things that wasn't predetermined, right?
Right.
That would have been an emotional response that you regretted later.
Oops, I'm about to fight Nolan. Not good idea. And then
not well thought through.
The Yankees. We're both fans of the Yankees. I used to love Martin getting fired and brought back by Steinbrenner. I used to Reggie Jackson with him and Martin would go at it, and just the Yankees with Ron Guidry. I was a fan because of Ron Guidry being from Lafayette, Louisiana.
That's right.
And then Roger Clemens, who your kids played with his kids in high school for baseball. But
that's right.
But Roger Clemens to me is my second favorite pitcher of all time, and was a Yankee, and had a bad rap at the end, but I still think he was one of the greatest pitchers ever.
I don't know how you differentiate between Roger and Nolan. It's just splitting hairs with greatness right there. But I have a different opinion than most players about Roger, or most people than Roger. I think what he accomplished was just amazing.
Yes.
And I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
I do too.
And I look at the competitiveness, and I didn't know this about him until I've only met him a few times and talked to him a few times. But when you listen to him, intensity just rolls out of that man. And I've never met anybody that talks in a more detailed way about his understanding in baseball and can make it where anybody that's talking to him can understand what he's trying to say. So nothing but respect for both of those guys.
And Craig, they're both built the same, him and Nolan, and they both threw the same type of heavy fastball. They look the same kind of, like you said, same kind of pitcher. And then Earl Campbell, I researched that you were a big Earl Campbell fan, and I was a big Earl Campbell fan because when he played for the Houston Oilers, my dad took me to the old Astrodome, and I'll never forget, I was at the game where he stuck his helmet in Isaiah Robertson's chest for the Rams and threw him 50 feet with his helmet. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I must have been 7 years old at the time. I said, are all running backs 250 pounds and run like that? And my dad said, no, son. Trucks are not running backs. That's a truck with feet. And, Earl was 5'11", 6 foot. The Texas Rose, Tyler, Texas native. But, man, was Earl Campbell good in his day or what?
I wore number 34 in high school in football solely because that was his number at the Oilers. I've never seen the combination of the power and the speed and the agility. It's rare. There's a lot of similarities between him and Dalton, to me at least. You mentioned it earlier. Dalton had a lot of power. Now, I don't know that he had the full range of power that Earl Campbell had, but back in the day when you were a running back in high school or college, you just looked at that man and your eyes lit up, and I mean, you couldn't walk away without being in awe of the physical ability of that guy.
Craig, if you think about it, if Dalton would have been 6 foot tall, he would have weighed 250. Because Dalton was 190 at 5'8".
Yeah, he was. They are. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel? Do you think there has a lot of similarities between their game, or do you?
I think if Dalton would have weighed another 60 pounds and been 4 inches taller, I think he would have been Earl. I really do. Yeah, I think Earl was. He was the legs. Their legs were about the same, but Earl's twice as big. But Earl had the biggest legs ever, and Dalton had some of the biggest legs in college.
Yeah.
But, if Dalton would have been 6 foot tall, we're talking NFL Hall of Fame probably.
I agree.
But he still played, 7 or 8 years with the Saints? So he still had a good career.
Yeah, I think that's about right. He had a great career. And, I keep saying this about everybody you're mentioning, but Dalton's the salt of the earth. I mean, it doesn't get much better than Dalton.
What people say back then and during your era, and I know it was kind of a little bit later, like 84, 85, Emmitt Smith comes along, Florida Gators. And people always, and I argue this with Gator fans all the time when I'm in Destin, Florida. And, if I meet a Gator fan, I'll say, well, who's the greatest running back ever? And I know they're going to say Emmitt Smith.
Right.
Well, I'll say Dalton Hilliard. And they go, no way. And I'm like, listen, do you realize they're the same running back? Dalton and Emmitt were the same type of backs. I mean, Emmitt was 5'9", 215, and Dalton had more power. And Emmitt got all the accolades.
Yep.
So, but I still think Dalton was better. And look, Florida fans do not want to hear that. They're going to listen to the show today. But Emmitt, no, don't get me wrong, he never ran a 4.5 40 like Dalton never ran a 4.5 40. But they were 4.6 for 99 yards.
Yeah, they were. I thought they were similar, and I'm biased too. But I've watched them both play, and I was always a Dalton fan.
Well, here's one, Craig. What do you think? What do you think of this? Let's say Dalton would have been drafted by Dallas during the Staubach days and Aikman days, and Emmitt goes to New Orleans during the pre-Drew Brees days.
Right.
So Dalton would have had that same career in Dallas with Aikman and Irvin.
I think it's more than a fair argument. I mean, the ability was very similar. So.
Yeah, and 5 Hall of Fame blockers in Dallas, that would have helped a little bit. Right?
Never hurts. Never
hurts. Michael Irvin on the outside and Jay Novacek at tight end and Troy Aikman.
Yeah, the holes might have been a little bigger.
A little bigger. Didn't have to carry the team as much. Might have played a little bit longer.
A little less wear and tear on your body.
A little less rare, that too. But I want to promote one more time, and I know you won't, but I am because I'm in recruiting. But your youngest son, Colton, is going to a junior college, leaving the University of Texas, where he signed, and he will be re-recruited again. And in baseball, you only play a year, and you're back to going to wherever you want to go. And LSU, if you're listening, Paul Maneri or any of the coaching staff at LSU, you've got a former LSU Tiger on our show today whose son's going to be one of the top 25, I would say, junior college prospects in the United States for this coming class. What you think, Craig?
Well, you're very kind, and I hope it all works out that way. I've been trying to have a Tiger for several years, and my oldest didn't want to go to LSU. They recruited him, and my daughter was asked to walk on as a gymnast there, and that wasn't a big. That was a little bit of a wrinkle for my wife, so she ended up going to Arkansas.
Yeah.
But I'm finally going to get a Tiger. My daughter's, now that she's graduated from Arkansas, she's going to go to LSU MBA school.
All right, there you go.
Yep, I'm going to get my first one.
And I know you come to LSU for games still, I hear, for football.
We are there every home game. We bought a house about 2 years ago, so we spend a fair amount of time in Baton Rouge. We love the city.
Craig Rathjen, we're listening to Craig, used to be a fullback for LSU, number 13 in 1982, signed with LSU with Jerry Stovall, George Ballou, went to the Orange Bowl, played with Jeff Wickersham, Alan Risher as a freshman. And any thoughts? I know Jeff Wickersham listens to the show. Anything about Jeff?
Jeff was probably the best athlete on the team as far as I can recall. He had an arm like no one I'd ever seen at that time. He could throw the ball probably 75, 80 yards. He was fast, agile. I loved watching Jeff play. He always would tell me that if he threw it to me, it was only because nobody else was open. So we had a good relationship. But I loved playing with Jeff all those years. I mean, if you look back at the classes of talent while I was there, and Jeff certainly is at the top of the list, but it's just unbelievable, the amount of talent. It's kind of, you talk about the Nebraska team that we played in the Orange Bowl, but I look at it and I go, we had a lot of
Right.
similar type of people that were playing in the pros for a long period of time. And
You know what the younger generation they don't remember is the 82 team defensively. Not that the offense had a lot of pro talent too, but the whole defense played in the NFL, all 11 and 4 backups. Yeah. And I don't think LSU's ever had that in the history of the school.
I just look at that. I mean, when I start thinking about every person that played on that team, on that defense, it was amazing. That defensive line was stout.
Ramsey,
and the linebackers. Yep, Ramsey,
Bill Elko. Bill Elko came off the
Yeah.
bench, didn't he? And he played in the pros.
I think he was actually a starter, as I recall.
Transferred from Arizona State. He was at Arizona State for a while.
Yeah, all I recall is he was related to Bill Cush. That was the coach's name, I believe.
That's right.
And there was a rumor when Jerry left that Bill Cush was going to come in, but Elko was a physical specimen. But
Yes.
Leonard Marshall, by far, what a career.
And then you're talking about Lawrence Williams, Al Richardson, Eugene Daniel, all that talent, that James Britt, that talent. Just talent. Jeffrey Dale, boy, he was a load. When I was a freshman trying to hit Jeffrey Dale on a lead block on a sweep as a strong safety, that was, every time that play was called, I just put my head down and sigh. Yeah, and that
man would hit you.
He was before his time. He was 6'3", 210 back then.
He was fast and solid. I swear to you, that was the one play I hated more than any play until Michael Brooks got there.
Oh, goodness.
And then when Michael got there, I hated having to pass block Michael. So
I remember the Kentucky game. I think it was 84. Craig, playing Kentucky. They had Bill Ransdale at quarterback, Mark Higgs running back.
Yep.
And the game ended up I think 10-3 or something in the end, but Brooks had 20 hurries, 4 sacks, and 16 tackles. It was like the Michael Brooks domination game. Like he won the game over Kentucky. He was just completely dominant.
He was the best outside linebacker he was on our team, but I practiced against him. But he was by far the best outside linebacker I played against. And that's saying something because the SEC was full of great outside linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Wilbur Marshall comes to mind. Trying to block Wilbur as a freshman was no easy task. And Michael stacked up against anybody that I played from that standpoint.
Heck, you had Reggie White at Tennessee as a D lineman. Reggie, one of the greatest ever.
Yep.
And he was a great player there. But, you know, the thing with Brooks, I always tell people this, and if you got to go to a 30 for 30 to watch it, if you're too young to remember him playing, Craig being a teammate, I always said he was the Lawrence Taylor of LSU.
He was. There's no doubt about it.
He would rush the passer, and if he didn't get a sack, he would call someone else to get the sack, or he would just cause the play to just go wrong. And Brooks was just phenomenal. And I always thought if he didn't hurt his knee against Florida his junior year on that turf, no telling what he could have did. He still played 7 years in the NFL, but hurting the knee, I think he was never the same, I think, for the pros.
You could block Michael once, but you weren't going to block him all night. There was just no way. You know, you might get the better of him one time, but that man was a player.
Yeah, Wilbur Marshall at Florida was an All-American, like you said, Craig, and then, you know, Michael Brooks, and, you know, obviously Lawrence Taylor at UNC that played in 81 and 82 was a great one, obviously, with the Giants. But, man, I really enjoyed having you on, Craig. It was really a treat to talk LSU football, talk about your family, and I think it's good people to hear someone that played at LSU that's still a big supporter, because not all former players still come to games, you know, and you do that, and your family are heavily involved with LSU, and you live in Texas. And so in Houston, Texas, one of my favorite cities, by the way. Before we let you go, since you're in Houston, are you a big Houston Astros fan?
We're Astros fans. The word big, I don't know if I go all the way to big Astros fans. And you mentioned it earlier. I'm still a Yankees fan.
Okay.
It also causes problems because my oldest son was drafted by the Yankees one year. I can't remember which. I think it might have been his junior year, but he and I are Yankees fans, and then my two younger boys are Boston Red Sox fans. So
wow, that's tough.
Yeah.
Those are three teams that do not like each other right now.
No, none of them. Yeah.
I was in Boston. I love to go to Boston for vacation, and we stay close to Fenway. And I learned the first time, Craig, going to Boston, never go to Boston during baseball season when football season's going on, because I was trying to catch an LSU West Virginia game. It was at LSU at that time, and the Red Sox and Yankees were playing in New York. And I'm thinking, oh, I got it. We're going to be okay. It's in New York. I go to every place to watch the game, and they have the Boston Red Sox game on. They're like, football? What's football? I'm like, oh, gosh. So we found a place to go owned by a former LSU student across the street from Fenway Park. And they had the fight song and everything in the bar, in the restaurant place that had the game. And so LSU, and they had over 100 people there visiting, all from Louisiana, to watch the LSU West Virginia game. That was a great experience. Being in Massachusetts, and they had some people in there that said, we're just in here because we like Kevin Falk, because he played for the Patriots. Isn't that crazy? So.
That is crazy. You know, the one last thing that I'll mention is what I'm really proud about the football team that's more off the field, I suppose, is the national brand that they've created, the way they're going after recruits from the Northeast, the West Coast. I think we just got one out of Michigan.
Yep.
And what Coach O's focus is doing is this national brand that it's creating is amazing. I can't go anywhere, especially in Houston, but I can't go even out of the state and wear an LSU shirt and not be stopped 2 or 3 times about people wanting to talk. And I think that may be one of the best things that Coach O and his program have put together, and it's going to pay a lot of dividends down the road.
Craig, I got to say this. It made me think of something. There's only one fan that's not happy about LSU hats. It's got to be A&M.
Right.
What is the temperature of the fans in Houston and people you know? I'm sure you got friends that are A&M Aggies, but What's the temperature in the room right now with Jimbo, and how patient are they going to be now that they're in the West with LSU and he's going into season 4? I mean, how long do you think till the seat gets a little hot and they expect something or some kind of, to get up there with the LSUs and Alabamas?
I ask that question to a lot of my Aggie friends, and I get an amazing response. It's patience out of them. And I look at it, and the way it's been explained to me by the Aggies that I question about it, and no one's going to like this answer, but the answer from the Aggies is we're patient because we haven't been winning in so long that they are, they're kind of becoming accustomed to being third in the SEC or whatever it is. Now, I'd have a hard problem being third in the SEC West if I were paying, $7.5 million to a coach and not, my personal opinion is if I was an Aggie, I'd want to see in the first 5 years of that contract, I would have wanted to see at least a West win, right? A West championship.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that after 5 years, I sit back and I look at that and go, that's a whole lot of money I wasted. But I guess the Aggies have a lot of money to spend. So.
And as long as they're third, the fence is down to recruit Houston. I mean, they can't stop LSU or Alabama as long as they're behind them, in the polls and everything. So they've got to beat Nick Saban if A&M wants to have a chance to win the SEC, because everybody goes, well, they got to beat LSU. Well, that'd be good. It's going to be tough to beat LSU, but you got to beat Alabama. And I think they're 0-10 against Nick Saban since they've joined the SEC, or since it might be 0-11.
I know a lot of people are. Yeah.
And so, and then Nick, I don't think he'll be around. The good news is Nick is not going to be around at least probably, I would think he's almost 70 years old. So I'm thinking 3 more years tops. So the good news for Aggies fans listening, they've got 3 more years. Then they could be the opponent to LSU to try and win it every year. So there's some hope there.
There's hope, and Jimbo's a great coach.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that. And you look at the other opportunities. The University of Texas football program hasn't been strong in years.
No.
Or at least not consistently strong, right? They might have a good team every now and then, but if you're LSU and you're looking at Houston or Dallas or anywhere in Texas, you really should be able to dominate that area. And there's enough good players now. I know Alabama comes into Texas a lot too, but it's a gold mine for LSU.
And the reason I say that about A&M in Texas and from football is that they're trying to nationally recruit. And I think if there's anybody that doesn't need to nationally recruit, it's A&M in Texas. They can sign everybody in Texas, basically. But you don't want to make these high school coaches angry at you in Texas.
Nope.
And so I just don't think you need to go outside of the state of Texas if you're Jimbo and Herman. So that's just, Louisiana, obviously that. Louisiana doesn't have the amount of prospects of a state of Texas or California or Florida. But look, Craig, again, really enjoyed it. I think a lot of ex-Tigers will love listening. Even people that didn't go to LSU, I think, are going to enjoy the interview. And it's really great to know. I mean, you've got 4 kids that have experienced college athletics. Even your wife was a gymnast at LSU. And it's good to see that, like I said, you still support all these schools. And, look, just stay safe and ready for football in September. And we'll see you soon. Talk to you soon, okay?
You too. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Craig. That was Craig Rathjen, the fullback for LSU back in '82. Played for Jerry Stovall and also was recruited by George Ballou. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brakeen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brakeen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Tune in on for part 2 of Lee's interview with Newman High School head football coach Nelson Stewart.
Coach, I did a stat, and it's not right at it, but it's safe. But in the history of Newman High School, there's been over 100,000 yards passing among all these quarterbacks. That's a lot of miles, man. That's a lot of. I mean, if you throw Peyton in there and Eli and their stats and their careers and all the guys we talked about, and then when Arch is over, I mean, I'm gonna have to go back again and see what high school between Evangel, the Booty brothers and Brent Rawls and all those guys, and then St. Thomas More, their quarterbacks. I'm going to do something with all 3 of these schools. It'd probably come out to like, 500,000 miles of passing yards or something when it's over with. But talk about Arch Manning, Cooper's son. A lot of people that are not maybe from New Orleans that are listening to this, but obviously Cooper was a wide receiver in the program that I thought was going to be an NFL receiver before he had a career-ending injury because of his neck at Ole Miss. But a great receiver. He doesn't get the feedback or talk from the past. Cooper doesn't. But he was a heck of a football player, right, Nelson? I mean, he was a pretty good football player. Tall,
he was
run.
phenomenal. I think in the history of Newman, arguably the greatest team we've ever had was that 91 team. And that was Cooper's year. He was a captain. Things about Cooper that are unbelievable. He was 2 times All-State. He had actually over 1,000 yards receiving it. Going up to 2010, Odell Beckham was the only other kid we ever had over 1,000 yards. He was 6'3". He could run. He was strong. He never dropped a pass. Obviously, he had great chemistry with Peyton, but he ran, violently after the catch. He was a great blocker. And, for us, when he went on and it was UVA or Ole Miss, and he went to Ole Miss, I think absolutely he could have. And if he wouldn't have had a career-ending, as you said, injury there, I mean, Cooper started on a state championship basketball team. He had so much confidence. He was a leader. I had no doubt. So kind of as we get Arch, his athleticism is not as big a surprise to me because, Arch will tell you Cook was probably the most athletic out of all the boys. And, just a phenomenal football player and certainly one of our all-time greats. And on the Mount Rushmore wide receivers at Newman, he's definitely up there. And again, in 91, when you're getting over 1,000 yards receiving, back then that didn't happen. And I think, again, he's somebody at Newman that we think the world of. And, you hit it right on the head in terms of his ability.
I always say Odell Beckham and Cooper Manning is the top receivers in Mount Rushmore at the school, as far as overall. Coach, when I watch Arch play, and again, I'm the outside guy. I've been in it 30 years just watching scouting. And I watch him, the way he moves and the way he throws the ball, his touch for his age at, his freshman season, which is incredible what he did for your team last year as a freshman. I see a lot of his grandfather in him from watching his grandfather's old film at Ole Miss, the way his grandfather could move. And I don't know why, I just see a lot of Archie in Arch. I do. I see, do you see any of that? I mean, from
Well, I think, I think the thing that you're saying, and I agree with it, I've kind of said, is, everybody wants to compare them, and that's natural with Peyton and Eli and Cooper. I think the thing with Arch is, he does have that innate ability to get out of bad situations. Yeah. He rarely gets sacked. He's real slippery in the pocket. He's really good at those off-balance throws that really you can't teach, where he's on the run. He's got a calmness about him really at all times that I think really kind of sets him apart. Obviously, he has a live arm. He's accurate. He has an appetite to always get better. But, when you see that maneuverability and moving around, I think it's a fair comparison. Obviously, as he calls him Red, Archie's his hero, as it is for all of them. And, he's a real special quarterback. And I think the biggest thing for me is that he continues to grow. He continues to evolve. And I think he's shown that he wants to do that with his willingness to, compete in the offseason against really good quarterbacks and throw on his own. And also, just on my Zooms with him, the questions he asks, how fast he's seeing things. And I think so. If you watch him, somebody will say, who's he look like? I think that would be a fair comparison, but I'll tell you, he's very unique. He's definitely his own entity. And at this point, he's gone from 6 foot last year. He was 5'8" as an 8th grader. Now he's 6'3.5", and he's 195 pounds. And watching him run in a mask in the gym, he sure looks a lot faster. So he's obviously a real special football player, and I just can't wait to get back out there with him.
Which is good that he's growing into the frame like his uncles there that are both 6'4", 6'5". He's on his way to being that himself, which is good for everybody, Nelson, the one thing I like, too, that I saw with Arch as a freshman is that on third down, like you said, when he's pressured, he's so calm as a freshman to get the ball over the middle, the toughest throw to make, and get it in there with touch, like you said. And if you make him go left or make him go right, rush him, he's not trying to rush the pass on the run. He's throwing it like he's in the, I would be careful about putting too much pressure, but just so calm, for a freshman.
Yeah, I think, he was the first, and you go back, decades, I can tell you he was the first freshman quarterback in my tenure and, goodness, and I think 30, 40 years that we started at quarterback. We'd never done that before as a day one starter. And for me, the biggest reason why I felt confident in it was what you just said, his ability to handle pressure. You can see it in 7-on-7s. You can see it in our competition drills where the games never seemed too big for him, even in games, where he struggled. And I should say the offense struggled with as we got a lot of pressure. He was still able to finish drives, and you saw that in St. Charles Catholic when he just played beautifully against that unbelievable defense. And really against Dunham, when all of a sudden you're seeing that two-man look that Coach Randy does such a good job of, and everybody's covered up. He was able to run the football. He didn't turn it over. Able to put us in position for success. There's so many quarterbacks now that they have their coaches and they're accurate, and their footwork, and they're so coached up. But there's that it factor where when the pressure's on, the pocket's collapsing. How are you going to handle that? I thought he really handled that well last year, and so I think just as you said, that for me was the thing that was most rewarding, especially as a freshman, which obviously I'd never seen before.
What I'm excited about, Coach Stewart, we're listening to Coach Nelson Stewart, head coach at Newman High School in New Orleans, is that I've been in this so long, and Nelson, you were in it at this time, either as an assistant or a player, but when Josh Booty came out the same year Peyton Manning came out, that was one of the greatest things ever for Louisiana, having the top 2 quarterbacks in the country. And now it's been so long since Louisiana's had a couple of great quarterbacks, and then you got Walker Howard at St. Thomas More, who's going to be a junior, and he's going to be one of the best in the country. And then you've got 2023 class Arch, 222 class Walker Howard. I mean, back-to-back, Louisiana's going to have 2 of the best in the country, if not the best quarterback in each class. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, I get asked that a lot. And it's funny. I think that, one of, Arch's really good friends is actually, Walker. He's gotten to know him really well. And I think it speaks to, the level of football we're able to play in the South and Louisiana, down here, the amount of work those kids are putting in. And you look at Walker Howard, I mean, he hasn't even, started a game yet. And that He's been at such an unbelievable program. Now he's able to move into that spot. It is an exciting time. And as I told Ogeron, man, that's going to be a lively quarterback room. This holds is pretty unbelievable. But that's great. I think that's exciting. That's as a state what we want to see. And yeah, I think each quarterback has their own skill set, but certainly as you alluded to, in terms of all your coverage, that these little windows don't come across very often. I remember like yesterday in the old weight room talking to, Peyton Manning about if Josh Booty was going to go play in the MLB or what he was going to do. And little did I know, however many 25, 30 years later, you look back and go, wow, what a time that was. And then Brock Berlin and Eli Manning and now. So, yeah, it's an exciting time. And it's just great to, watch these kids grow, and I hope they keep improving and just get the best they can for themselves and their teams.
People always ask me in recruiting, Nelson, I've got these friends of mine that are retired coaches, some of them you would know. Hey, who's the best? I'm like, listen, between Arch, who just played his freshman season, and Walker, who hasn't started. I watched Walker in spring practice at the school, Nelson, last year. I watched him get 50 reps, and he threw 30 touchdowns. And watching both of these kids, I'm like, they're both at the same level. And that's how I answer it. They're both at the same level, which are special. And if you're special, let's not put stars behind special. And so, but that's how I answer that. And then one quarterback I want to ask you about that I watched a lot of, that Tulane got a signee signature from in the 220 class. I love Justin Abieta from Country Day. And I think he was a huge steal for them. What do you think, Coach? I think he could play for anybody. He reminds me of Rosenberger from the Steelers with his build and his arm.
He is, look, in my tenure, he is as impressive a player as we've seen. I watched his junior season where we had a good lead and literally almost, and I would say it's a tremendous team, on his own, whether it was throwing tacklers down, running, throwing, came back and they beat us, just on him. And I've told Justin that time and time again. I've seen him at Manning camp. He was as good a high school football player and quarterback as I've seen. And to me, when I was able to see him again against Catholic New Iberia, I think he threw for almost 500 yards. And, against a Brent Index team that was going to the Dome, he did the same thing. And he almost drove them all the way down to win. Justin is almost 6'5", 220 pounds. He has that innate ability to be calm. He was a three-sport athlete. He was a star in all those sports. His footwork, his release, but while he may have some rawness, I guess, just because of how he is so unique, and that I could not agree more. I think Justin, and I told Will Hall this when he committed, I said, boy, you just got to steal, because I think the world of him, and he's another one. You'll look back at his prep career and what he did for Country Day, and really in everything he did. He was a team-first guy. He was friends with all the kids at Newman. He's the kind of kid that every kid will say, you'll never find anyone that doesn't like him. He's a kind of kid that I think every kid wanted to hang around, but a fierce competitor, and just his ability to extend plays, his accuracy, throwing the ball downfield. And, when you had everything dialed up and you had him wrapped up, all of a sudden you give a shovel pass for 8 yards for a first down. And he is fantastic. And I think he'll do really well. I know Justin knows, I feel that way. I even told his mom, who's the volleyball coach, Julie Ibieta, I said, boy, you know how I feel about your son. And while we were able to get a win against them this year, even in watching throw, when we played Tulane, we were able to get a big win at Tulane Stadium. He was phenomenal there. So, no, I'm a big fan of his, and I think he's got a great career in front of him.
We're listening to Nelson Stewart, the head football coach at Newman High School in New Orleans. And, Coach, here's a data bank that you would love. Tulane, I think, in my opinion, signed two great Louisiana high school signees at quarterback. The two that I remember that were the last two was Terrence Jones, Lutcher, and Patrick Ramsey from Ruston. I thought those two guys were phenomenal. And when they signed those guys, they got big-time steals, and they were winning when they signed those guys. Those quarterbacks did great things at Tulane. Now, Sean King signed, but he was from Florida. But getting Ibieta, I put him up there with Patrick Ramsey, and I put him up there above both of those kids. I think, Terrence Jones was one of the greatest to ever come out of Lutcher, and Ramsey was a great quarterback at Ruston. But I think Ibieta's potential is going to be better than both of those kids.
Well, I think, I was, Sean, when I played at Tulane, Sean was in my freshman class, and obviously, he was a really highly recruited kid coming in. That was a big get for Coach Stevens and Coach Monica back then. Terrence Jones was so unique. But ironically, the guy I remember on his recruiting visit was Patrick Ramsey. And one thing about Patrick, he was the state javelin champion coming out of Ruston.
That's right.
And he had a cannon. he had even though maybe didn't get the undefeated year as he finished, he had a tremendous career there. And I think that's a fair comparison, just the way he presented himself, how calm he was, just the way he was in the pocket. I think Justin, has some of those similar abilities. And, he's, again, you don't put a star by him. Justin's one that he wanted to go Tulane. He got it done early. He wasn't interested, I think, in looking at a bunch of different schools. I think that would be great for him. And, that quarterback tree at Tulane, the really high-end ones, as you look through, I do think that's, again, a fair comparison in terms of Patrick. And obviously I was a little kid. I remember very well in the Terrence, Louisiana Jones poster back in the day when he was so phenomenal coming out of Lutcher. But no, I think, that's a fair comparison. He's a big kid. And, what Will Hall does on offense, he's so innovative and he can run. And I know Will does like to run the quarterback sometimes. Justin can do that. He's not just a pocket passer. So I think it's a beautiful marriage with Willie Fritz and what they're doing over there and Will Hall. So, yeah, I think I'd expect big things, and it certainly won't be a shock to me.
Coach Stewart, thank you for taking the time out of your day with everything going on with all your workouts. I know you're off today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. As always, I enjoyed talking to you, man. It was fun, and I just pray we have football. I know we will. Somehow we're going to have football because we've got to have football, right, this season.
Well, yeah, I was on a committee call the other day, and as we've said, we don't know what it's going to look like. We don't really know what we're looking at, but as Eric Held, our representative for the LHSA, says, we're going to find a way to have football. So
that's good.
At Newman, we're excited. I think everyone is, and I think it's the new normal. And it's kind of one of those days where you're sitting in a house, a hurricane's coming, and we're just trying to make every plan possible to get through this. And I'm confident we will. And again, in a great state. And again, I really want to thank you. In my 15 years, going at 16 now, you've been a phenomenal ambassador for high school football. And I know right now, the pandemic, not able to have your show, the fact you're able to do this podcast and keep football in front of people and push it out there, just know how much I appreciate you and all you do. And again, just thank you for your time. And it's been an honor talking to you, and hopefully I'll get to do it again soon.
Nelson, your team will be promoted as always. We're doing the 24th issue. Speaking of getting old, man, 24 years. Late August. We're not going to let the pandemic stop us from doing that. We're going to have the magazine out late August, early September. We'll have your team previewed. A lot of good. This will be probably one of your best teams on paper. We'll see what happens. Good luck to you, Coach.
Oh, thank you, Lee. I look forward to seeing the issue as always. And again, thanks for you do. And we'll see what we can do. We'll try and make a run of this thing. So thank you so much.
Win the state, Coach. I'm pulling for you.
I appreciate it.
Right,
yes, sir.
All right,
okay.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Burkeen.
Hello, Sports Scouting Report fans. Like what you hear? Well, you're going to love our content at LAFootballMagazine.com. This week, check out Recruit Spotlight on Landry Walker quarterback Justin Hudson, who has committed to the Tennessee State Tigers this past week. Also, make sure to check out our podcast and pre-order your North or South Magazine edition for this upcoming season. All that and more on LAFootballMagazine.com. Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Burkeen. If you want to read more on high school and college teams in the state of Louisiana, go to LAFootballMagazine.com to pre-order your North or South Magazine preview edition for the upcoming 2020 season. Also, don't forget to subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you back on Monday.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Burkeen.